Okay, so does anyone have anything they'd like to share this morning or ask any questions or comment on?
Mr. Kim, this is Jan.
Yes.
When we were breathing in through the anal sphincter,
Yes.
I had the distinct feeling that that breath coming in was spinning the dantian.
Did you say thinning?
Spinning, like turning it.
Oh, spinning. Okay, got it.
Is that an appropriate action of the breath, or is it supposed to just pass by?
No, it's supposed to spin. That's actually supposed to happen even if it comes in from the Mingmen or the front and the back. So it is supposed to spin.
Thank you, Master Kim.
You're welcome. So yeah, that's actually a really good question. After this one, I'm going to be taking you guys through a series of these. And I could actually make the argument that I'm trying to help you guys spin the dantian. So that's actually one of the main things that I'm trying to help you guys accomplish. So if your dantian was spinning today, that's actually a really good thing.
Thank you, Mr. Kim.
Welcome. Yeah, in no uncertain terms, it starts actually feeling more like a turbine.
It felt like it was spreading warmth.
Yes. It definitely spreads warmth, and then it also starts feeling like a turbine.
Not there yet. Thank you, sir.
That's fine. So it either feels like a what do you call that? Is it a water wheel? You know, I think it's called a water wheel.
When it's in a hydroelectric plant, they call it the dynamo.
Okay, yeah, it kind of feels like that. So, and you know, that's a sensation you're looking for. So you actually had exactly the experience that you're supposed to have.
That's nice for a change. Thank you, Mr. Kim.
Yes. Well, enjoy. Yeah, it feels like it's spinning, and then eventually gets to the point where it feels like a turbine, and it definitely spreads the energy, and it also expands the energy. And so, yeah, just continue to see what happens. Don't try and make any of the things happen that I said. Just keep breathing. If the anus towards the front wall of the dantian, and try that. And then for some reason, if that doesn't feel good, then just go back to breathing where you're feeling the front and the back wall of the dantian, and just see what happens in the space between. And don't try and make any of the things that I said happen. It is, and if you do, you know, when you get frustrated because it's not happening, stop and then just go back to the front and the back wall, and then it happens eventually. These things, as I always keep saying, you know, I tell these things so that you recognize when it happens, that it's supposed to happen, but not so that you try and make it happen, because it typically builds frustration. Now, sometimes actually you can get yourself to do it, and if you can get yourself to do it, then try it, and then you know, and some people like to visualize it, and then you can certainly do that. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to accomplish is where when you're just breathing regularly, where this happens. And as you can imagine, if that's the case, you can't consciously do it. You know, it has to just develop. And so, and oftentimes when you actually try and consciously develop it, because of the controlling factor, it doesn't develop properly because there's some tension involved. It doesn't just expand and kind of get developed the way it would have naturally developed. And so it's like one of those things where even if you feel like you're accomplishing something, you have to eventually go back and redo it anyhow. I actually happen to fall into the people where I could do these consciously. When my Taoist teachers would tell me these things, I could do it. And I thought that was a good thing. And then eventually I had to go back and then give it all back up because there were all these crevices that just never got developed because I was controlling it because of tension. And so I could only do it externally. So anyway, so hopefully that helps in your training and keep enjoying the wheel, the spinning.
Thank you, Master Kim.
Welcome. Okay, so thank you for that sharing. So anyone else would like to share anything or comment on or ask any questions?
This is Mr. Caseno.
Yes.
Well, I have a question about what you just said, and thanks, Jan, and thank you, Mr. Kim, for your explanation. And then when you said I could only do it externally, it just brought up a lot of curiosity.
Yes.
About what that means exactly, like, because I'm really working on this edge of one of the problems with knowing things is that it's just feels really hard not to try to create something, you know. It's almost like there are days when I'm like, I don't want to think about anything I've learned at all, because if I do, my mind just automatically, it goes right into like focus and intention. And so, you know, it's hard to know things right now because of that. And I don't know if that's what you're talking about, like trying to make it happen. And it kind of does, but it's based on effort versus it happening more spontaneously.
Oh yeah, that was really well worded. Based on effort rather than happening spontaneously or naturally or or effortlessly. Really well said. So externally, I actually really meant to say superficially, meaning as in like I have like, you know, the experience to a certain extent and and so, you know, I have some of the experience and, you know, experience it and, you know, it kind of feels it. But then, you know, it doesn't just happen. I have to stay on it. And also, because it's created from a little bit of tension, the experience is never as full. It's never as like, I don't know how else to say it, but it's never as full. It's like, it's always like you can feel that you're doing something to make it happen. And so what I recommend in that case is that if you're like me, where you can't stop efforting, then what I recommend is that just try it a few times until you know you can't do it, and then just go back. And then that way, at least you'll feel like you've tried something. And then kind of, you know how like I always point out the basic exercise, such as just, you know, focus on the dantian, the front wall and the back wall. So once you've tried the cool things, if you feel like it's there and you've tried those things and you efforted it, and then it's not kind of working, then it's like you have the knowing it's not working. And so it's in some ways, if you need to do it to let go. And that's actually what I had to learn to do is that I just kind of just did it to let go. And then once I've done it, then I go and just go back to the basics. And so kind of just fall back into it. And it's just trying a whole different ways to let go.
Mhm.
So I don't know whether that's more helpful, but I didn't mean when I said externally, what I meant is superficial, meaning as in it's not just happening naturally the way it's supposed to happen. And it's efforting. And so the descriptions that you're using were really good. And if you have trouble letting go, then just try it a few times where you say, okay, I've tried this. Okay, now let me go back to the basics so that I can practice being natural.
Yeah, that's really helpful. You know, it brings up this bigger picture question that always goes through my mind, which is sort of the balance between knowing what could happen as a way to sort of create possibilities, I guess,
Mhm.
versus trying to get to those particular places, versus not knowing anything and just doing it without any sort of, you know, like do the exercise and see what happens. Sounds it you know, sometimes I wonder if it needs to go back and forth between efforting and not efforting. Or if there are times when it's just like, Dan, don't think about anything, or don't even, like today I just don't want to learn anything. I just, you know, it's not about learning, it's just about seeing what happens spontaneously, because I'm trying to, because I'm just so naturally, I tend so naturally to try to move towards something with focus. So because you know, I don't know if this is like part of certain traditions where they don't even tell you anything that could happen, and they just say, just see what happens, and then just let it happen really slowly until it just happens spontaneously all by itself. Or is it, you know, so it makes me curious about, like, for myself, sometimes what the best ways to go, because I naturally want to learn information, but that's such a bias for me that sometimes it feels kind of like learning information is a liability.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. You know, if it helps, Mrs. Bisana, I have been part of both schools. I have been part of both schools. The first school I joined, I feel like had a really good balance, but its tendency was towards, okay, here's a basic exercise. Okay, now see what happens. So that was my first school. It was actually a more traditional, in some ways, a more traditional school of kind of like closer to hermit school. And the teacher was very hermitish. And so, but that was my first school. My second school was more traditional, where you learn the technique and you try to do it. And so it was kind of like closer to the efforting school. And then my third school was like somewhere in between, actually. But you know, all of them had a base foundation on basics. You know, none of the same. Where he said, okay, when in doubt, go back to the basics. And so, what I recommend here is that you need to do all three. You need to actually do all three. You need to know how to learn and be able to do something by efforting or imitating, if you want to call it that, where you're trying to do something. And then you need to be able to just let go and what happens. And then you also need to just explore and then see what happens without any kind of preconception. And really, you actually want to be able to do all that. And because fact of the matter is that you need to be able to do all of them. Now, what I would recommend is, so kind of like have this picture where you want to be able to do all of that. And sounds like you're good at conscious learning and you have a big advantage in that direction. And so one of the key things I'd like to say is that it's actually impossible not to explore, because the Dantian breathing is such a big subject, because it's not just a singular thing that's supposed to happen. The things that's supposed to happen with it is actually crazy, to such an extent where it's really described to say all the different things that happens and all the different stages. So even if you're able to do some of the things that I talk about, it doesn't really matter, because you have to find out anyways. You have to explore anyhow. So it's gonna be like, even if you try an effort and then you learn something, eventually you're gonna be like, oh, hang on a second. You mean to say, like, on top of that, this is also supposed to happen? I was like, oh, and that? And then, and that? And how are you supposed to hold it all together? Like, how are you supposed to do all of that at the same time? And what happens is that as you keep cultivating, at some point, you start really feeling the vastness of it all. And then you start letting go. And then you start realizing that even if you thought you were getting it, you really weren't. And you needed to just let it happen anyways, because you start realizing that even if you could superficially mimic it, your body was nowhere close to actually having it happen naturally like that. And so there's a natural letting go that happens by the nature of the exercise itself. And so what I'd like to say is that see if you can learn it, if you want to try it a little bit, and then after trying it, just go back to the basics and then see what happens, knowing full well that anything could happen. And then it's going to be a trip. It literally is going to be an altered state of consciousness trip. And how far and deep you go will actually just depend on that day. So I don't know whether that was helpful.
Yeah, that's great, Master Jim. Thank you so much. Really helpful.
Okay, good. So, and I'd like to just say, I feel your pain. And so I think that, what you're trying to learn or come to terms with is how, it's kind of like interesting because that kind of like quick or sharp or conscious learning, is so prized in this modern day and era. It's actually what makes us successful in, at school, and it's something that makes us successful in our careers. It actually gives us a lot of acknowledgement from society, and it's kind of exploratory learning where you don't know what's going to happen, and like whatever you notice, which is a very subjective kind of learning, is really not prized at all. And so it's almost like even difficult to give value to, because you can't get any acknowledgement from anyone else, because it's something that you feel and then you're like, cool, wow, that was different. And it's really difficult to value that to a certain extent, because in some ways there's no one to validate that experience. There's no one to say that that experience was a correct experience, or there's no one to ooh and ah about that experience. And it's really just a subjective experience where only your own sense of satisfaction can give it credit, where you're like, whoa, that just happened, that was cool, I don't even care what someone else says because that was way cool for me. It's kind of like actually the experience. And I think that's actually why Taoist exercises over time connects a person so deeply to themselves, because eventually it gets to a point where it's kind of becomes pointless trying to tell someone else what's going on, because it's like because they're not gonna get it. And, and um, so these are kind of like the different things. And I feel like when you have had this successful learning, this conscious learning, I mean, you've been very successful at it, I think it's very difficult to kind of switch over, because in the very beginning, the rewards are just not there. And we're not used to having the rewards that we give ourselves be enough. You know, the joy of, whoa, that was way cool. You know, like, I like that, you know, and people who are lucky, they got it from their parents when they're growing up, where the parents are like, oh, that's way cool. And, you know, they may actually not think it's cool, because, you know, when something is happening with a baby, some parents think it's cool, but for a lot of parents, actually, it's boring, because they've been there and done there. And, you know, it's like, it's not a big deal to, you know, see yourself being able to pour water from one cup into another. And, you know, when you're a child, when you first find out that you have enough motor skills to pour water from one cup to another, I mean, that's like the bomb, right? I mean, you can do that for hours. And actually kids do, right? And that's kind of like the finding for yourself that you're doing with your own energy system and actually your own body. And in the very beginning, when we've been used to getting recognition from society and from other people, that just seems way cooler. And so I think it's very difficult to actually just go into this kind of learning, because the societal benefits or the recognition benefits, you know, or, you know, the highs that comes from getting societal benefit is just not there. And, you know, we don't even know when we start feeling these things, whether it's actually supposed to be cool or not, because we're not used to actually having it be cool just for ourselves, unless we've had the kind of education I just talked about. So I certainly understand the dilemma. And I think the difficulty of just switching over. And what I'd like to say is that as you stay on this, you know, just keep, and I feel like you're doing this already. And I just want to just say this again, is that try the things as we talked about, where you see whether you can make those things happen. But then, even then, when you make it happen, don't try and make it happen because that's the right way, or because it's, you know, something special, or because it's the right way, but just to see whether your body can do it. You know, even make that exploratory, kind of like, cool. And then once you get a feel for it, if you like it, continue doing it from an exploratory perspective. If not, let it go and just go back to the basics. And really actually kind of look this, what experience am I going to have today? Ask yourself, this is something that really helped me. What experience am I going to have today? And you'll notice that whatever the experience is, even if it's similar, it'll be something that's a little bit different. And don't try and make anything different happen. If it's the same, you know, that's actually also okay, because for the same thing to happen again, that's actually not common. And so just kind of have that expectation of coming in and finding out what's going to happen today. And I feel like if you actually approach with that, you're going to become like a kid in a candy shop. And, you know, I think that from talking with people, I get the feeling that's actually akin to people who, let's say, for instance, do, you know, like plant medicine, such as psilocybin and ayahuasca, or things like that, where they don't know what kind of an experience they're going to have. And it's an altering, it's a life altering experience, because your state of mind changes. You have a whole new experience. And because you have a whole new experience, you get to have a whole new perspective on life. And it's the same idea. And so every time you come into this, see what kind of an experience you could, you know, that you're going to have today. And if you approach it, I'd like to say that you're going to be going on a trip. And that experience of going on a trip is what's going to become valuable.
Yeah. That's
Okay.
really helpful. Thank you so much, Master Ken.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay, very good. Okay, I am done cleaning, so I gotta scooch. I'd like to wish you all a great trip today. And I'd like to say with a little tongue in cheek, that's why it's called the way, right? It's called the way or the path, you know, the Tao, the way or the path. And it's called that because you're going on a trip. And so have a nice trip.
Thank you so much, Master Kim.
Thank
You're
you, Master
welcome.
Kim.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Master Kim. Drive
Thank you,
safely.
Master.
Thank you. That was hilarious. Drive safely. Oh, mascots. Okay, very good. Well, you also drive safe. Okay, bye.
Thank you.